We can just break into the meeting. Start with the first committee meeting starting at 5:30. Mike, that's you.
I call this committee meeting of the Communications and Community Engagement Committee to order. Is that wrong? You said no. It says 5:30.
I mean, you could take it.
Great, I'm really excited to present the latest on the Parks, Recreation, Open Space and Access Strategy, also known as PROSA. My name is Stephanie Cornell, I'm the Long Range Planning Supervisor. Today, I'm delighted to provide an update on where we are in the project at a high level. We'll also talk through the latest phase of public engagement and then talk through the next steps. And so as we know, we're developing the PROSA strategy because of our Parks and Recreation System Master Plan goals and our strategic plan. And really, there are four main objectives to PROSA: to improve 10-minute walk access to FCPA parks. Once you get to that park, we want to enhance access to different types of park experiences. We also like to enrich habitat activity between environmental corridors, and then take all these priorities and projects and analyze and prioritize needs with an equity lens. And so in terms of the project schedule, we're in phase 5. We're just finishing up providing the final report, and then we'll be back to you all later this month with the final draft strategy. You all have received it by email today, just to send that in advance, and hope that finds you well. And we're really excited to talk through the public engagement that took place over the course of the summertime. Our public engagement phase was from July to August, our second phase. And really, we had, of course, some of our core elements, of course, on our project webpage. We had 2 virtual community meetings. We had a lot of feedback from our survey too, and also in-person outreach. We went across the county and conducted in-person outreach at 9 community events, 1 each for a supervisor district. And then, like our first phase, we also provided these materials in a variety of languages. And then we received a lot of comments. We had 2,300 comments, over 900 open-ended feedback, comments in our survey, and received a lot of engagement in this phase. And I'd also like to point out that in addition to that outreach, we also did outreach throughout the county with Athletic Council, the Board of Supervisors, Health and Human Services Committee, the HEAL team, EQAC, the Environmental Quality Advisory Council. Also, Jay had an awesome interview with the Fairfax County Consumer Connection Facebook Live program, and that interview is on the project webpage. And we also presented to the Trail, Sidewalks, and Bikeways Committee. We received a lot of amazing feedback and a lot of endorsement for the draft PROSA report, and the strategies themselves. We received a lot of amazing feedback on really the need to prioritize an equity lens, also how it would positively affect people's lives in terms of having a variety of recreation experiences and being able to walk to a park to improve their lifestyle. And in addition to supporting these main components of the PROSA strategy, we also received a lot of feedback for improving access to everyone, especially in communities that don't have access to parks. That comment hit pretty frequently. And then also support improving access to parks by bike, the importance of families spending more time outdoors to maintain and improve their mental and physical health. And then also the importance of removing invasive plants to improve habitats and also park access and trail access. And so we reviewed and considered all public comments as we were revising the report to produce the final draft strategy report, which we're just wrapping up. And really, as we head into the next phase of the PROSA strategy, there are going to be 2 end products. We have our report itself, and then also we'll have a GIS web-based platform that's a lot more interactive than a report, and that'll be really interesting. That'll have definitely a real-world example like we walked through a couple months ago in North Hill Park, and just have a lot more interactive features to it. And so really, as we know, PROSA is a data-driven approach, and it in practice will positively impact our capital improvement program, acquisitions, the trail system development, park development, and park condition assessment. And so really our next steps are to come back before you all later this month on the 27th for any additional feedback and also endorsement of the final draft report. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions and feedback.
If I can you go back at the slide, the capital improvement. Do I remember correctly in the conversations that we've had with this, that, but also with some of the groups we talked to? This is a layer of the decision making. This is not the decision making piece. And I think that based on just some of the conversations that happened at the athletic council and with folks afterwards, it's just important to remind folks that this is not the black box through which the decision is made. This is just a tool to help with other tools to make the decisions. Is that fair?
That's accurate. Yeah, it's just to help inform the decision-making process.
Yeah, couple things. First, on the public outreach itself, do we have a sense of the people who responded in terms of their background? Do we know anything about who responded? Is it a good representation?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we have a better representation in the first round, and we leveraged our relationships with our focus groups. And also.
Okay, but no actual demographic information, but it's a feel that it's a little bit more representative than the first go round.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Couple questions on the draft report itself, and I did not read the one that got sent out this afternoon, so these questions are based on the one that was online beforehand. So if anything is wrong at this point that I'm asking about, just let me know. So you addressed one of the questions on the previous slide talking about the GIS platform, because I did want to see somewhere an explanation of this in practice, and it sounds like that's going to be covered in the GIS report. In the access to park section, where we talk about how we define 10 minutes, we set the walking speed to 3.1 miles per hour. I assume that's based on some kind of national standard, but I guess, can we confirm that for me? And then two, in the language in here, can we explain why we are using 3.1 miles per hour?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So that 3.1 standard is definitely a national best practice. We suggested in the final draft report is to remove that just in case that best practice changes over time. In case the new data comes up.
So in that section, then how will we explain how the 10-minute walk is calculated?
Yeah, we'll explain that it's calculated through about estimated half mile through the existing public network and realms of safe access.
Right.
Yep.
On that specific point. I believe that we have a whole lot of reports and plans and stuff that all refer to national standards and use specifics of what those national standards are at the time the report was adopted. I can imagine that if we took the approach that we were going to take out all of those national standard numbers, all of those recommendations, all those reports, we would have a lot of stuff that nobody would understand. So I question why we would take out the reference to the national standard of 3.1 miles per hour, whatever here. And if that's the policy moving forward that we're going to be taking out the national standard references and everything, I can just imagine that all of a sudden a citizen will go, oh, based on the national standard of the whatever, now they have to go look up and figure out the whatever is that's being referred to, rather than just saying, when we adopted this, it was the national standards, therefore so people can understand what they're reading.
I think
the 3 words that just says the national standard at the time of this.
I think it's backwards. I think that the idea is that we're looking for a half a mile walk. And the way that we came to a half a mile walk is by using the national standards. So I think it's solid what are the data that using the half mile, right? The half mile walk. If the national standard changes, we want to still stick to the half mile walk. Maybe later on when we do another one, we might change it, but we're not basing it. It's not going to change as the national standard changes. I think the national standard just described how we got to that.
I was just thrown off by we're going to take out 3.1 because the standard might change.
We're taking that out just because it's the description of what that half mile is?
Yeah,
Is
well,
that the intent?
I don't know. Again, I don't know what the final draft report says, but the draft report that's on the PROSA webpage right now is the street network data was obtained from S3, whatever that is, and walking speed is set to 3.1 miles per hour. So I just was curious. There's no explanation of why. So I was curious how we got to the
Which
3.1.
led to the, gonna take it out because the standard might change.
Right.
Which is where I got thrown.
Well, we're gonna do not next time, 2 times from now, the final report. Yeah, so next time. So next time we're gonna come with the final report. Let's look at it and
I mean, I
see
don't,
what that looks like.
I'm less hung up on the specificity, it's just explaining how we're doing it, because it does determine what the radius for half a mile is.
And I'm just concerned about the example. 'cause
With the
if
radius
taking
for
it out-
10-minute walk.
Or, yes, sorry, 10-minute walk. It would not change
No, it would not.
And I
what a
was-
half mile looks like.
And I was just thrown by the answer that if we're taking it out because we're afraid the standard might change and we're gonna apply that to all of our reports. If that's gonna be our. new
I think it's
approach,
good.
that's a problem.
I think it's not so much because the standards change. It just makes it weird. It just
I
makes
don't
it
mind that. I
over
just-
weird. Yeah, it's a half a mile. It's more of a way of, we didn't pick it out of nothing.
Right.
And so let me look at the which one, yeah.
As long as it's explained.
How much has this standard changed over the years? Do we know?
I doubt it's changed a lot. This is
I
a
wouldn't think
this
so.
is a fairly new, the 10-minute walk to parks is not like it's 50 years old. This is like a new endeavor nationwide as everybody uses.
3.1 mile per hour,
It's probably been 100 years of a 10-minute, of a 20-minute mile.
that's probably what I
of
think.
walking.
If you really want to go after it, you could send Jay out for a walk. Calculate her.
No.
How long does it take Jay to walk on?
Depends on what's on my mind.
1 mile?
Depends on what's on my mind, how fast I go. Yes, exactly. I'm yelling out on the phone.
In the park experience score section, I think that's another example, another area where a real world example would be helpful. I mean, and it might be in the final draft, but the one I'm looking at, you have the template there, but nothing filled in. So if we could do something in the final report, just to give people a sense of what that means in practice, whether it's a specific park or I don't know, pick a neighborhood and say, this is what things look like for this person. They have enough parks that they meet all these 4, or they got 3 of the 4, just something to put some context around it for folks. And then the last 2 questions are in the habitat connectivity section. There's a mention of right now the assessment not including meadows, wetlands, or other types of habitats. I just want to make sure that we are actively kind of looking to rectify that. We're collecting that data. See, John Nani said, I assume that's those big countywide. Okay. Can we just put that in there then? So that it doesn't appear that we don't have it at this time and we're not doing anything about it. We just kind of leave that dangling. And then the last thing is in that how do we get there section. The last bullet point, consider opportunities to improve habitat connectivity within the county when acquiring parkland. I just would hope, this is really more of a comment than a question, we're proactive in this. I could see opportunities where we have park here, park to the left of it, and the space in between would improve connectivity. So are we going to be bringing those to us to consider because of that? Or is habitat connectivity just going to be another measure when you actually have a
So it kind of gets to
property
Mike's,
in front of us?
it kind of gets to Mike's question about the tool to use. It's going to highlight places that we can connect different parks for habitat connectivity. This is, how do I explain it without saying it's my big block of cheese? At some point when PROS is done, I'll explain it later. At some point when PROS is done and we're finished, that's the next exercise one of the things that we're talking about is how do we look at, because there's places that we have FCPA property and then BOS property, then FCPA property, then an easement, and then you might think, oh, well, it's all in conservation. It's not,
Right.
because so looking at, school has properties that are too small for just looking at what's on the board in general and different ways that we can go about it without, I have to caveat it, without adding to the land bank is the key for that. If we were to take on BOS properties that are in RPAs or whatever, and then it's kind of like everything else. Everything has a prescription and you always want to go for the cheapest, easiest prescription first. This is not saying that the first thing we do is we go out and spend $30 million on something. The first thing might be try to get the land for free from the BOS, try to get the land for free from X, try to all the way up to, okay, now let's look at strategies of, okay, we've done all that stuff. There's still this one property that we need to buy for X amount of times, and that will connect here to here and what the habitat, and PROSA will help us determine.
No, okay, and that really addresses the main concern, which is just being intelligent. So, cool. All right, I'm done, Mike.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, I believe we'll see, we have a draft we received by email in case you haven't had a chance to read it. But the hope is to have a is the next board meeting discussing final version, all right? So if folks go home and read it, I'm sure you would like to maybe say out loud a deadline that you would like feedback in, so you're not getting 15 minutes before the next meeting. I'm suggesting out loud, perhaps that'd be a good idea.
That'll be terrific. Earlier the better. for them.
So perhaps since it'll be a little, maybe a week from today would be a good deadline,
That'd be super possible.
just suggesting. Okay.
And
So
that's
try-
end of
try to get-
October, what's the date? October. Is our next board?
September 27th.
September 22nd.
Well, I was going to check that because I was trying to understand, so I think there's an email that doesn't include that date. Which is why I was
Okay.
gonna check.
Okay,
Yeah, the idea is to bring us back in 2 weeks.
sorry. Yep.
We'll come back in a committee or just in the actual board session, I guess, depending on the,
No, not committee?
No, this is the committee,
This is the committee
So-
to talk about public engagement.
Right.
right?
There'll be another, one.
Back to the committee
Okay.
to talk about
To
the
the
draft.
final. To then
Yes.
push out as an action item.
For
to
that.
Push out.
that'll come back to
For
the
that day.
planning
For that,
committee.
hopefully for that.
okay,
Right.
cool.
With that, we adjourn.
All right.
All right.
We've got,
And we'll give you back 4 minutes of your life.
yeah, we got a couple minutes before we can start the next one.
Kevin, Sarah. Thank you.
Oh,
Oh,
hello, oh, wait till. So this presentation, I'm just gonna give you a little bit of background and then we're gonna sort of tag team that we also have Mike somewhere in the audience if we have financial questions who helped us put this together. This was born from PROSA, actually. We took our PROSA to the HHS committee June 13th. And after that presentation of our PROSA plan, there was a lot of conversation about parks in general and a lot of conversations about maintenance. We also get a ton of requests in from different supervisors about our maintenance standards and our ability to get to specific things. And so because of the interest from a lot of supervisors, Pat Harity being one of them, Kyle actually asked us to come and give a presentation on an overview of our maintenance program and some of our challenges. So that's what the impetus behind this presentation is.
So I'm just gonna start with a real high level overview, kind of taking us back in history. And so I think for the first 60 years of the Park Authority, our focus was on serving the needs of the community, building parks, making sure that residents had parks within close proximity to their home, making sure they had different amenities within close proximity to their home. And then probably around 2011, 2012, the board kind of took a step back and said, we really need to start taking care of what we have. I think some of you were around at that time. And through the 2012 bond, 16 bond, 20 bond, we kind of shifted our focus from building a lot of new to reinvesting in the system. At the same time, the county invested in the general fund sinking fund, and really the focus of the organization was we need to take care of what we have. And so that's really been the focus of the board, from my perspective, for the last 12 years, and I think the focus of staff. I think that was further reinforced in the 2016 needs assessment when we asked residents how you would spend $100. The majority of that $100 was take care of your natural and cultural resources, reinvest in the system, and take care of what you have. And so that's really has been our focus for the last 10 years. Next slide. But we have a huge system. As you know, over 23,000 acres, 9 rec centers, 8 golf courses, multiple skate parks, 229 playgrounds, 720 garden plots, and really the list goes on. So we are an enormous system with a lot to maintain, with a lot of unique features, including our amusements, our train at Burke Lake, multiple carousels, all the athletic fields. I think we have the most synthetic fields in Fairfax County in the country. And so there's a lot within our system that we have to have different expertise to maintain. Next slide. So how is park operations funded? So there's 3 funding buckets that we look at for operational support for park operations. The first one is salaries. This is our personnel, 10.5 million, and that is just salaries. That does not include benefits. The next bucket is general fund operating, that's 2.5 million. And the other is county construction fund, and the 5.69 million is just within the county construction fund, the funding that goes to parks. There's other funding within that bucket that goes to maintenance of school athletic fields and our support of equity for girls softball tournaments. Next slide. So again, the personnel bucket that pays for salaries, general fund that's appropriated by the board of supervisors, pays for our operating general maintenance of parks. And then county construction is for the maintenance of our athletic field in the 5 million that we're talking about. It takes care of system replacements within our facilities, mostly our general fund facilities, grounds maintenance, contract mowing, rentals of porta johns and other amenities within the park. I'm going to turn it over to Kim. You have kind of a baseline, and I know everybody knows how we're funded. Kim is going to talk a little bit more about park operations and the different branches within the division.
Good evening, everyone. Kim Eckert, Division Director of Park Operations. It's my pleasure tonight to give an overview of what Park Operations does. So I thought I'd start off with our mission. Of course, I won't read it to you, but there's 3 main components. We maintain the parks, facilities, and equipment. We work with community and stakeholders to meet public needs. And we support all of the other Park Authority divisions in fulfillment of their mission. Slide. So the organizational structure. So Park Operations consists of 4 different branches. The Park Management Branch, the Facilities and Equipment Branch, the Countywide Grounds Branch, and the Support Services Branch. Shown here on this slide, you'll see some of the details in addition to number of positions for each branch. On the next slides, I'll elaborate a little more on what each branch does. Next slide. First, I'd like to highlight the Facilities and Equipment Branch. This branch is the backbone of our entire operation. This branch manages all the facilities and infrastructure maintenance, as well as small renovations throughout the park system. It manages all of our vehicles and equipment. It processes over 4,000 work tickets a year. And there you see some of the positions. We do all that with only 29 staff. Next slide. Next slide is just an example of some of the equipment that we're responsible for maintaining. Here you see some grounds equipment, as well as some of the equipment you will find in rec centers these days. Next slide. Our next branch is Countywide Ground Services. This branch consists of forestry operations, project management for small infrastructure projects within our park system, a small mobile construction crew, a turf management crew. We also manage all the school athletic field tickets. So we have 1 employee that manages all those contracts. We do all of that with just 30 staff. Next slide. Up next, we have our Park Management Branch. This branch is divided into 6 geographical maintenance areas. On your right, you'll see the maintenance map. It's a little small. We can provide you with a larger version at some point. But we thought it was important here to sort of call your attention to the inventory that's in each of these 6 areas. The inventory far exceeds the existing staff. So you'll see anywhere from 14 staff to 18 staff that is responsible for managing and the maintenance of this inventory. So there are frontline staff out there communicating with all the other branches. Next slide. slide just further illustrates some of the functions of the park management operations maintenance crew. So our maintenance crews are divided into two different crews. One is the athletic field crew and the other is the parks and mowing crew. Some details, in these different crews are trash removal, they prep infields, they paint fields, they inspect synthetic fields, and they monitor all the contractors for the mowing. The park maintenance crews, some of the same trash removal, inspect and repair park amenities. They complete trail and picnic playground maintenance, as well as monitor contractors for mowing, restroom cleaning, and porta john services. We do all of this with 92 staff, spread out among 6 areas. And last, we have the Park Operations Support Services branch. This branch provides essential services in support of the entire division. Such services as budget administration and contract management, the volunteer management program, the Masterbrook grant program, and all of the public inquiries and maintenance reports that come from the community. We have one individual that receives all of those contacts from the community. She receives over 4,000 contacts from the community in here. We do all of this with just 7 support staff. I'm going to turn it over to Jay.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, so we're gonna highlight, we're using our FY23 budget because we're actually able to compare it to actuals. So using our FY23 budget, if you look, our salary is 10.5 million. The budget adjusted, and then the actuals. The actuals are what we actually spent. So if you look at salaries, 10.5, our actuals 8.1, general fund operating 2.6, and actuals 4.7. We'll get into that in a second. Go to the next slide. Okay, so if you look at our general fund operating, that's the money that we use to do the forestry increases, the contract mowing, any contract type issues. It's 2.6. What we actually spent in FY23 is 4.7 million. So how do you go 2.1 million over your budget? Well, if you look at the next slide, our salaries budget is 10.5 and our actuals are 8.1. We have to move money from our salaries over to operations. And to do that, we have to hold positions and not fill positions so that we can take that $2.1 million that we should have in Kim's operating crews and hold them in order to move it over to our construction fund. So we talk, the general fund operating. So we talk about things like, and we'll get into it in a second, forestry. It's like, oh, how did you go 800,000 over? That's all held positions that really should be out in the field. Next slide. So we're going to see this slide a lot. And right now, every time I'm going to show before we talk about stuff. So let's talk about personnel. So personnel is the red graph, and this shows what our personnel budget was from FY08 to FY23. And you can see there's dips and there's increases. The majority of these increases are all MRA. Next slide. So what we're showing here is in the same time frame how our park system has grown. So in our park system has grown about 1,000 acres in the same time frame, 25 more miles, 35 more athletic courts, 34 more picnic shelters, 26 more playgrounds. And this is just what we chose to highlight. But overall, our park operations positions have decreased from 184 to 158. So 26 positions have gone away. And that's not what I'm talking about holding them. That is positions that were removed from the budget and taken. And the bottom, you see the position reductions we've had every year. So you'll see the reductions in the red. In the green, you'll see position additions. You'll see that we've had both reductions and additions in one year. So we had 2 positions taken in FY22, but we received 1 position. We had 2 positions taken in FY24, and we received 2 positions. And so total positions added is 5, but total positions reduced is 31 for a total of 26 positions removed. That's on top of us holding positions to be able to pay that 2.1 million. Next slide. I do with our vacancies and our, we also are still recovering from COVID impacts. COVID happened, we had a freeze, hiring freeze, we had spending controls implemented, we had a high staff turnover, and hiring efforts are resumed, but our vacancies are slow to fill. So we're working with all of the things to bring in people for the positions that we have vacant. If our heads were below water before COVID, now with all of those, it just put us deeper and deeper because we already were short-staffed. We became more short-staffed with COVID, but we are recovering hopefully from that. Next slide. Okay, so operating budget, that's the light blue. You see our operating budget difference in FY08 to FY23. Next slide. Okay, so the FY23 actuals for the operating budget, again, is $21 million over the allocated amount. 2.1, sorry, not 21, 2.1 million. Next slide. Okay, so this is important because how did we get $2.1 million over what we have allocated? The really quick answer is CPI. So if we look at the bar graphs, that is what our budget, our county construction operating plus am I supposed to be doing this slide? Okay, our county construction operating, I tend to continue, plus our general fund operating budget combined, and you see it's gone up, it's gone down. The purple bar is what CPI should be every year calculated. At the end of the CPI, just between 2008 and 2023, there's a $2.1 million difference. So that's where the $2.1 million that we're over. That's just CPI from 2008. Every year we don't get CPI, we have got to figure out how the costs still go up. We still have to figure out how we're paying for the mowing contract, paying for forestry, paying for everything else. And that's really where that gap is coming from. Next slide. So this is not from lack of budget requests. This is a list of our historic budget requests just for operating budget under maintenance from FY17 through FY23. We've totaled about $22 million in requests for maintenance, and you can see what we have received every year. In that time, we've received $2.6 million. So we've asked for 22 million and we received 2.6, and that includes everything. That includes CPI asks, that includes operating budget asks for new parks, that includes capital equipment, that includes forestry, that includes every ask that we've made under Kim's purview. We did put an asterisk of the COVID timeframes because nobody was really getting much during COVID. Next slide. Okay, so this describes the forestry. So we just use this as an example of sort of how that CPI really starts to impact and how that, so there are other issues, right? John would come up here and explain the whole forest ecology and whatever. There are other issues that why our forestry numbers are going up that has to do with the trees in the county, but also their contract dollars. And so if you look here, 2023, $24,000, 2019, this is how much we went over our allotted money, 508, 254, and on down. If you look to the right, that tells you where we had to steal the money from. So to get in 2019, to make up a $508,000 deficit, we had asked for, and we got $300,000 in carryover. Park maintenance fund, we took $100,000. General fund, we took $58,000. Athletic fields, we took $50,000. 2021, $81,000 from park maintenance. General fund, $218,000, and $60,000 from athletic fields. It has to be a zero-sum, game. We got to make up the deficit somehow. So
quick question. So in the park maintenance and general fund columns, are those operational dollars or are those holding vacancies open?
Those are
Combination. Well, it's all, yes, combination.
Wherever you can find it.
Yes.
Okay.
But a lot of it is just money coming from vacancies.
It's from park operations.
And then on this chart, I assume even though some years have third quarter and carryover blank, we made a request.
Okay, next slide.
So I think the other challenge besides not having enough staff, not having enough funding is the assets that are beyond their useful life. So we've shown this slide numerous times. challenge that we have, just like an old house or an old car, we spend a lot of money to maintain and keep it running. Our staff are doing the same thing, whether it's our lighting systems on our athletic fields, whether it's, systems within rec centers that are failing, and we have, rental equipment outside to keep the facility operational. Our staff spend a lot of time just taking care of our old facilities, amenities, and equipment.
Right.
So this slide, another challenge is capital equipment. So we receive about $200,000 each year in capital equipment. You'll see from this slide, from FY11 through FY18, we receive $0 for capital equipment. Go to the next slide, please. So we end up with a huge backlog, and that's demonstrated by some of the pictures you've seen of our capital equipment. If you compare us to stormwater management, we have almost double the amount of equipment. That's almost double the age of their equipment. And the value is about $500,000 more. If you look at what they're spending on capital equipment, it's nearly more than twice the amount that we're able to spend here based on our allocation of $200,000. We have been successful getting one-time influx of money for capital equipment, but it's not something that we can depend on. To date, the $200,000 has been what we've been getting for the last couple of years. So again, just like our facilities maintaining capital equipment, we have 3 mechanics, and all of their time is spent on really fixing our equipment. There's not a lot of time for preventative maintenance, although they try. It's really a lot of time where they're spending where equipment is down, which is impacting our staff's ability to mow, to take care of our parks, because of the age of the equipment. Next slide.
Before you go on, where DPW gets. This is gonna sound like a dumb question. DPW gets its money from the county, obviously. But where, is that a specific line item that they have to ask for? Or
Right?
is it?
Stormwater,
Part of the storm.
it's not part of general fund.
Okay,
Item on your real estate.
Yes.
Your tax bill,
okay, so that part of,
dedicated revenue.
yeah, that dedicated revenue, they pull part of that out for projects, they pull part of that out. For regular maintenance of equipment, okay, but it's not a line item they have to request for, okay.
Okay, so this is mine. I get the job of talking about benchmarking. So it's really important when we're talking about the number of staff in the slide that Kim was there about the 14 people who have 94 parks that they have to get to in crews of 5 crews of 3. Two different crews in each area. And so when we talk about things that they get to, that's how many things that they can get to in a week, especially when they're spending 2 full days at least on trash. So those crews spend 2 days on trash, at least 3 days to get to actual things in parks. So let's compare some comparable park systems. So Fairfax County and Mecklenburg County, which is Charlotte, we have double the amount of parks. They have 18,000 acres. We have 23,000 acres. Population is roughly the same. They have 202 maintenance and a operating budget of 24,000. So the acreage, this is sort of the industry, what you want to look at. The acreage maintained per operational staff is 92 for Mecklenburg and 150 for us. And the amount of money operating expense per acre of land is 1,300 in Mecklenburg and 799 with us. Next slide. Now we're going to get into local competitors. So Fairfax County versus Montgomery County. So we have the exact same amount of parks, 420 parks. Montgomery County has more acreage, 37,000 acres, although 26,000 of that is natural areas. They have a lot of natural areas. So we're pretty comparable in our managed area size to Montgomery County. Maintenance operations staff count is 502 to our 158. The park operating and personnel expense budget is $54 million, $0.3 million to our 18.8 million. Acreage maintained per operation staff is 74 to our 150, and they spend $1,460 per acre to our 799. And I have to note, this is the difference in their operation and maintenance staff, and they are not recreation. It's a huge difference. So that's all not having any rec centers. This is only 3 nature centers and all 2-dimensional park operations.
Ask,
Yes, of course.
our Montgomery, I should know this, our Montgomery County and Mecklenburg authorities or departments,
Montgomery County is a commission,
commission.
which is, Mecklenburg County is a county agency. The difference in Montgomery County being a commission, their budget is still appropriated through the county. So even though they're a commission, they still have to request money and it's still appropriated through the Prince George's County is different. Prince George's County has what's called TRIM, which they have a percentage of the budget that comes automatically to parks. We can talk about that later. That's a whole different, sort of, thing. Montgomery County has, for what Kim was describing, in terms of all of those things are completely separate divisions. They have a division for the northern region. So there will be 5 Kims, division for the northern region. There's a division for the southern region. That's just the area maintenance crews. There's a division for facility management, which is the trades, which is the equivalent to all of the carpenters that she was talking about. There's a separate division called HEFI, Horticulture, Forestry, and Environmental Education, that has the forestry crews. And then a separate division, a portion of a separate division that does trail maintenance. So that's Montgomery County. Next slide, just lest we think that we're comparing to Montgomery County. Next slide only. Let's look at the neighboring jurisdictions around us. So Arlington, Prince William, and Loudoun County. So if you look at the number of acres, Arlington has 924 acres, but spends $16.4 million park operating and personnel expense. They spend $3,515 per acre to our $799. Prince William County spends $3,469 per acre to our $799. Loudoun spends 2,384 acres per our $799. And look at the staff counts in general, 66, 146, and 84. So this is not cherry picking and looking at it. We are far below the industry standards, as much as we, Kim and her staff really do value the parks, and really, we went to the rodeo today. We'll talk about it in a second. I mean, our staff are phenomenal. They're great. They would love to spend much more time on something. Imagine going and cleaning your house for guests and always seeing like the broken, trim, and just never having time to get to it because you're just always just trying to make sure that the juice box is off the counter. And that's what our maintenance staff are doing, every single day. I wanted to make sure that we are alleviating any thought that they look at and like, I just don't want to do it. They have 94 parks that they have to get to with 2 crews, and they have to really triage what are the biggest safety issues for patrons that are coming in, and things that are just going to continue to get, worse and worse. Add to that, as we all know, Kim talked about 7,000, how many calls do we get? 4,000 calls. So every single call is somebody who wants us to do this from what are normal every day. So that's the calls from the public. And then we have the calls that we get from supervisors, offices, and political calls in to do, and everything sort of swerves away. So that thing that we want to get done just takes longer and longer to get done.
But
Next.
that's also very similar to, because we're so understaffed and we can't keep up with our maintenance.
Right.
We probably get a lot more calls than these other counties do.
Mhm.
So we are not actively maintaining things. We're a lot of times not proactively maintaining them.
Yes.
Reactively,
Yes.
maintaining them,
Yes.
which is a lot less efficient
Yes.
than proactively
Yes.
maintaining them.
There's,
So that's, I mean, it's funneling through us. I know it's funneling through me. And I feel guilty every time I pick up the phone and say, somebody wants this, but they're not wrong.
No, they're not.
Most of the time, they're not wrong.
Correct.
But anyway.
and that's and that's one of the reasons why we're doing the presentation. They're not wrong. It's also not because, and I don't mean to be trite. It's not because Kim and her staff are sitting around playing backgammon
No,
all the
it's
time.
not.
It's just the nature of how much stuff that we have to, get that in the best case scenario. In reality, we would have a system. I would have a system where you've got crews out doing work. You've got somebody whose job it is to get eyes on in every area, who just drives around to make the list of things that has to be done, who takes it back and somebody else enters it into the system. And then you wake up, you come to work in the morning and you know what you have to go do based on so there's a person sitting, entering into the system, somebody going out. Look, every park should have eyes on it every week. Parks with 92 parks and 14 people, parks might not get eyes on it for a month and a half or somebody specifically calls.
I would only say I was listening to the front of this presentation. I was like, oh, right, yeah, year to year, year to year. That's really hard to explain to anybody. You know, we understand it because we're immersed in it all the time, but even explaining it to a supervisor is difficult. It's a lot of data to go over. And I feel like I've been talking about benchmarking for years. I see these benchmarking figures and I'm like, bravo, bravo, bravo. And it's showing what I suspected that it would always show. I mean, I think we need to go into a benchmarking mode at this point. I mean, the big old master spreadsheet of who's doing what people have and analyze ourselves. And frankly, we may even find some stuff where we're falling short, but I haven't seen it so far. But the benchmarking is everything. Fairfax County Public Schools benchmarks one school against the other. You know, Virginia benchmarks different counties, schools against each other and different things. Benchmarking is the way everything is measured. But I think we've been told historically, don't benchmark, don't tell us what we're not, providing for you guys. But we're getting nowhere with that strategy. It's time to benchmark. Thank you.
We have to.
Let's go.
Thank you. We have
Do
to
it again.
explain what the common practice is, because it's really hard to
But
explain, yes.
I would say, in all of our benchmarking, there's no reason not to do this. Make sure it is overly credible. Let's not ever get caught as misrepresenting anything. Not that we would. But, I know there's some things in salaries and benefits and stuff like that to some of the other counties. Make sure we account for those nuances and stuff, but benchmarking is everything. Bravo, thank you.
Every single one of these benchmarks came from the director of that agency, 3 to 5 hours ago. So, yes.
I mean, I don't disagree with the benchmark analysis, but my feeling is that the earlier slides showing how much we have to cover and how much staff is stressed is stretched. And how much is not being done because we don't have enough staff, or because we have to reallocate funds, or because we have to keep positions open and vacant. I think that's a much more impactful. What is the impact of this? Certainly, the benchmarking shows we're being underfunded disproportionately, but how does this affect our customers and our parks?
But the year-to-year stuff goes a percent here, a percent there, whatever. This shows the picture of big difference. Okay, and just people can always ask if you compare yourself to last year and the year before and the year before. Well, how efficient were you back then? How efficient are you?
Marks that I can recall over the years, and I don't think it's been much.
Linwood,
That's my.
so just with the benchmark, and I get your point with it, but I think in, making this case that we have to be ready to answer the question about differences in terms of revenue for these different counties, right? Because we know some of these counties bring in a whole lot more in terms of revenue than we do.
Taxes are higher.
That's a statistic
Right.
too. That's part of the benchmark.
But I mean, so that should be a part of what we
Absolutely.
include in that conversation, because someone could say, well, Loudoun County has more money, so what are you saying?
Well, and the constraints on how you tax are different in Maryland than they are in Virginia. I mean, there's a variety of things to your point. I have some questions that.
There is one more slide.
Just do, do the one slide. Oh, it's a summary.
Yeah.
So just,
Great summary.
yes, thanks.
My question.
Of the operating costs, if you compare where we were with CPI, we have less funding than we did in 2000.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is one piece that I wanted to leave everyone with is we've grown tremendously since 2008. And if you look at the operating dollars, we have less now.
Yeah, and so
Well, to me, that's part of the benchmarking. What have the other counties done in the financing? Have they decreased like we have? or have they increased? Again, I'm sorry, I'm a totally benchmark man.
I had
Do
a
you wanna-
question about, go ahead, Ann.
Please go ahead.
The historic budget requests, can I see this slide, please? Cause I was a little confused. No, it's
Towards the beginning.
yeah,
This
this
one.
one. So, I mean, I can understand what happened in 2021. But what was going on in 2019 that we didn't get anything at all?
So this is the delta.
This is the typical.
This is, but if I understand this slide correctly, this is not. The budget, we asked for X, we got Y, and this is the delta between what we asked and what we got.
Okay.
So it's not that we didn't get anything, we just
Okay.
got $2.3 million less than we wanted in 2017.
Okay, thank you.
Right,
No, 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 no. We asked for 2.3 million. We got
oh,
226 million. So
Delta.
the delta
delta
is the
is the
end, right? So
Yeah.
this isn't the delta. This is the top is what we asked for. The
So in
bottom is-
2019, it was 0,
So in 2019, we asked for 2.1 million and we got nothing.
and that's normal.
Now, this does not include, this is funding requests. Again, we got to be very clear on the numbers. This does not include MRA. So in those years, we got MRA for staff, but for general fund staff. This is talking about, we need more money. All the things we're talking about, our contracts, our forestry. So that's yes.
So a couple things. One, to your comment. I think it's careful, I think we need to be careful how we recognize the calls to go to supervisor's office, because those aren't necessarily inherently political. Sometimes it's easier
No, no, no,
to
yes.
call supervisor's office than to find it from them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's all the same thing,
Yeah.
the public or the city.
It's-
For the record, I think every call is there hasn't been very few calls that are not a valid, we should go out there. And if we have more, say yes. Sure.
It's easy, a lot of people know their supervisor better than they know how to call the park authority to talk to here. Couple things that go into some of the numbers, I have some questions, and I actually think that you may have understated how bad it is.
Is that,
So in the first part of the presentation, when you talk about the different positions. Is that positions or is that bodies?
Those are positions, not necessarily filled positions.
I think that it is worth making sure that we help folks understand the difference between the two. That I think that when you say we have 16 people in an area of 4, the area 4 is like 14 people, whatever it is. That when you have 14 people in area 4, people think, oh, you have 14 people. You may have 14 positions, but you may have 9 people or whatever.
Right now, we have 14 people.
But I think,
so there's two different things. If you go back to the slide, could you go back to the slide that has the branches? It's all the way at the beginning, like the first slide. This slide, are those people or positions? These are positions. Now go forward to the one with the maps on them. This is people, butts and seats. So
Okay.
yes,
so I think that
Right?
I think
Okay.
that in changing how you designate. I think that creates some inherent confusion. I think that, for example, here with that knowing that you may have 16 positions, but only 14 filled with area 4
Mhm.
is helpful.
Mhm.
I also think that it's important, and I think this was addressed a little bit in conversations with some of the supervisors at the HHS committee meeting, or whatever it was. I think it's also important that there's a difference between the positions you're holding vacant
yes, keep going.
and the positions that are unfilled that you are trying to.
Thank
fill.
you. There's an absolute difference, and that's what got hung up at the PROSA.
Yes.
Is when, if you ask me, thank you, if you ask me, yeah, I knew it. If you ask me what our how many vacancies we have, those numbers are that it's all together. That is a different question for, we have positions that are technically vacant, that those funds have been moved over to be able to cover that $2.1 million deficit. Then we have positions, there's 3 sort of categories of positions. Then we have positions that are vacant that Kim is actively trying to fill, right? And that's not easy right now post-COVID. So they are actively using every single tool in their toolbox to, no pun intended, to fill those positions. The third group is it's a long story, but workforce planning. And so the way workforce planning works is that we need to evolve in-house. Because as you saw before, we don't get new positions. If Kim has a position that is, I don't know, roller skates coming back, roller skate, maintenance person, something that doesn't happen anymore.
Maybe
Right.
a painter. But
Painter.
now we have so many issues with HVAC systems. We no
Thank you.
longer need a painter, we need an HVAC technician. And so we
Yes,
workforce plan.
But that takes 6 months. That takes a very long time to do. It takes we have to hold that painter position vacant until the time, I'm saying 6 months, until the time that the workforce planning happens, to be able to submit that for workforce planning. That only happens twice a year. So right now we withhold a painter position to submit for spring workforce planning, to convert it to a HVAC person, and then have to wait for that to happen and then advertise it. That might be a 7-month swing of that position being vacant because we're going through workforce planning, but we need to switch. I can't just hire an HVAC person in a painter position. So that's right now we're doing a lot of that right now. That's not normally this many, but we're really focusing on maintenance right now because we have a lot of issues where we're trying to put the right person in the right
Well,
place.
just to be very clear about workforce planning, that is an internal county process. We have to go across the street. for
Correct.
permission to do it.
Correct.
And question, now in giving up the painter's job, position, are we saying we don't need painters anymore, or we're just saying we need HVAC more?
We have to do that we would normally keep, the way you grow is you say, we need 7 more HVAC people. We ask for 7 HVAC people, we get that and we move on. We don't get that. And so Kim has got to triage and say, what's the biggest fire happening in HVAC with our older systems, the biggest fire happening. So we can't spend that much staff on the painting aesthetics. We need to put them into making sure that the rec centers and everything doesn't go down. So we're evolving sort of in.
But then
House.
down the line, we're gonna contend with the fact that we can't keep up with our painting.
Well,
then I know.
We're approaching painting a different
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, but, okay,
Okay.
yes, I still had a series of, I'm sorry, I wasn't. So. I think that we did have these different buckets of kind of positions. So, I think that as you look at like the buckets that you're talking about, I don't remember exactly what you mean. You have the ones that you're intentionally holding open, so I'm just gonna take all of those and set them aside for a second. We have these positions that you're struggling, that you're trying to fill, that you're struggling to fill for any variety of reasons. And I think that that is an important story to make sure people understand, because it's not like, hey, we wish we could, we have all the people we're going to get, because we're holding positions open, and this is just the maintenance level you're gonna get. Versus we're trying to hire, and there are issues that we're having just hiring people. And I think that's part of this story that I think gets lost, that I think is important to understand, because especially if that continues long-term, it means we have to address internal processes, hires, benefits, pricing, whatever it is. We have to look at, how do we get people if after whatever you determine to be the X amount of time, we don't get them?
And can I just, our retention rate is pretty good.
Right.
So, and part of it is because, we're parks and we're a great place to work. However, everything is circular. Everything ties into everything. If you are a mechanic and you have a choice to go work on a 2020 Camaro, or come in and work on a 1979 and make sure that a 1979, backhoe works every day so that Kim can use it. And you have the option of going anywhere in the county. They're going to go to DPWES. They're going to go to schools. They have better stuff, right? They have less stress on that. There's less stuff that has to happen. It's really hard. We can keep people because once they're here, they know how awesome Kim is. But enticing people through all of the carpenters in the county to say, no, come work for parks, not schools, not DPWS, where you get a nice, 4x4, whatever it is difficult. We're competing with all of those agencies to bring people in. So that's.
I just, again, that speaks to that's an issue that we should keep an eye on and make sure that we figure out how to.
Yes.
If you can go forward to the slides that show I think it was 15 years, but the line graphs of the year by this one. So the way I read this, you're looking at hard numbers. one thing I don't think this does, which I think is especially relevant in recent years, is it doesn't adjust for inflation. And that it's not only that our budget has stayed where it is or gone up a little bit. The cost of a lot of what we're doing has gone up a lot of it. And we have seen this in terms of some of the projects that we try to fund. Whether it is Mount Vernon Rec Center or whether it's a playground, I mean, costs are just going up. And I think that good, bad, or indifferent. At least for a couple of years, it looks like we're going to continue to have some level of higher inflation than we became used to for over the 30, 40 years prior to that. It just, the way it's gonna be at least for a little while. Because I think that it's correct that showing the fact that we've increased the number of acres, the number of parks, the number of stuff, and that our staff has gone down is important, especially when you consider that folks across the street, all of them are wonderful people, many of whom 4 years ago, a number of them 4 years ago weren't supervisors and weren't focused on parks. And there's one person over there who at one point was really focused on parks or maybe at 2 points, because he was also a staffer at one point. But for the most part, they don't know the stories of, hey, we're getting this property, we're getting this stuff, and we're not getting people. And so they don't know that story. So I think that's a critical story to tell folks. But I think that the other piece to this is that it's impossible for us to provide the level of service that folks say that they want us to provide without addressing the amount of budget dollars the park authority gets.
Yeah, by the way, Mike, I think there was a chart which had the CPI.
Yes.
differential in it, so.
That's what that is. Yes. I think it's the next, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
But it's not,
built.
it's not built into this graph, though.
No, keep going.
there it is.
There, yeah, go back. Sorry, back two. So that's the purple line is inflation. So the purple line is inflation and
Okay.
the blue plus green equals the supply operating dollars that should be adjusted for inflation. So if the
Okay, so
same,
this is
yes,
This is the two, okay, because I was thinking the 2.1 million gap was when it went through it. I was looking at that as the gap. That
No.
was back to the 2.1 million, the way you held up.
no, it's a $2.1 million that we're missing. Yes,
Well, it just strikes.
And cumulative, it's much.
much more.
But
Yeah,
it-
we're
but
just
the purple, I just didn't recognizing, I'm just surprised that inflation was such a big issue in 2011. And 2012 and 2013.
2000. What do you mean a big
Because
issue?
the purple line and that line are separate.
So it's cumulative. So this is showing sort of the purple line dots are showing what each dot is every year's
Prior
CPI.
to
So
it
Mike
plus.
added, what is it? The
Because all
consumer-
what it should be if we got the inflation.
Correct.
number
If we
each
got
time.
CPI every,
So it's gonna expand over time.
It's a geometrically.
yes,
increasing rather
correct, correct.
than- I think that. It's important to show what it would be year to year, not cumulative. Because from a planning, yes, sir.
Mr. Thompson, let me just,
You can come-
correct this actually, yeah, let me go up there. This actually is, year over year.
Okay.
What we calculated here is, just like the county does with CPIU, it's January to January, so we looked at the buying power, each year and saw a pretty steady increase with some flatlining. But then you see these last 2 years, it, skyrocketed.
This is a year to year, not a cumulative. year
That's correct.
report.
Not okay.
So 2023 by itself is a $2.1 million gap.
Yes.
Okay, no, I think that is an important story to tell, especially because if we're going to have the budget issues over the course of the next 18 to 24, 36 months that we're potentially going to face, there's gonna be lots of pressure of all these other programs and all this other stuff. And I think that I think that maintenance is one of the key things to talk about. Because people want, it's not just that they want parks, they want clean parks, they want parks they can take their kids to and not have issues with, or they can go be in. I think that it's gonna be critical to walk through this piece of it and emphasize it as we, maybe not in the next 3 months, but I would suggest that when it comes to budget hearing and decisions being made by county executives on what to present, that it's really important to walk through the historic piece and this piece while making it also clear so that folks don't get confused on the openings.
It's a very long story to tell, and I want to make it clear, because it's both things, it's all the things. It is what it's all the things, but it's what the community wants, but it's also, I don't want to make it seem like we're being reactive to the community. It's also what Kim wants, and it's what Sarah wants. It's what I want. It's what we want as a gold medal award-winning park system, is the level that we should be operating at. Community, correct, correct, exactly, yes.
Yes.
Oh,
We're
look
part
at
of the
it. Yes,
community. It's something we own.
But I think you hit on a good point that, you know, we have the FY25 meetings coming up with supervisors. I think from what Jay said, and I would tend to agree, there's a lot of content in here. I'm not sure we can cover that in the same meeting or even any part of that, but we ought to be having dedicated meetings on this subject with the supervisors, and I would say, I'm not sure we want to wait three months for that.
No, I agree. I'm just saying that we get to go public because of our process. I mean, and so that's what we get on the emails. I'm just saying that this is gonna be when everybody else is feeling the pressure too. This is an important way of how we break through.
So another quick question, the state obviously now has adopted its biennial budget. Schools clearly are getting an uplift out of that. Is there any other money that the counties are getting from the state, of which we're aware? I'm not aware of any. Okay, thank you.
And in terms of the positions, and just for clarity, would it be possible to have a slide that kind of breaks it down to say this is what the number of positions, this is what we have currently, and as much as possible, the other ones that need to be filled, right? Even if you don't want to go into the other context. So, you know, if someone is looking at it, they can say, okay, we need 5 filled.
Just to clarify, that blue line with positions, it fluctuates from area to area.
That's true,
So,
Yeah.
that's total number of positions, but, you know, depending on what area you're talking about, the vacancies fluctuate, and they turn over, you know, so,
That's true.
that's part of it too.
But I mean, just any, and I that is helpful to know, but
I
just
Yes,
any,
we can do that though.
But there's
Yes.
there's an internal issue I just don't lose track of, which is a recruiting issue of positions we're trying to fill,
Mhm.
that we're struggling to fill, that while we have to go have budget conversation, kind of have this global conversation, I don't want to lose track of that critical conversation about recruiting and getting
We've
people.
advertised the Patriot position 4 times.
Yeah, it's trying to figure, it's how do we solve that?
Yes.
Is an issue I don't think we
And
can lose track
what
of.
that impact is now the existing staff are the ones maintaining that facility because we can't find dedicated
Right.
staff. to Patriot.
Right, exactly. And I just,
It's that impact.
and that is critically important to you all operationally. And it's critically important, I think, for us to understand when we're having recruiting problems and to figure out what we can do to be supportive of helping you solve that problem.
and if I may just add, do we have a sense of what some of the difficulty is? What is it that is not making us as attractive as we need to be outside of the old machinery and stuff? Like, is there a sense?
You mean for recruitment?
Yeah.
So, as Patriot Park, as the example, we've advertised it several times. We get, you know, some candidates, but they end up going with the private sector. Normally it's, you know, the salaries, that we can't match or even compete with. So that typically is what we run into.
Thank you.
To me, this subject that we're talking about, nothing more important in the park authority right now than this, because this is what makes everything else work. Money is what makes everything work. So this discussion is totally appropriate. I like everything about it tonight. We're way over. So if anybody has as long as anybody doesn't have anything really.
Just a request, I'm gonna take chairman's pride. Can we put this in some kind of narrative form? Because it loses all context after today. The presentation, we'll just share that with the board.
And no, I would just augment what you said and say that the recruiting issue may be an indication, even based on the answer, that we have a bigger money issue Right, then we think, because right now our money issue is based on, oh, we're willing to pay somebody X. It may be that while we're willing to pay them that, we can't hire anybody at that.
That's not unique to us. though.
No, I know.
That's everywhere.
I know, I'm just saying, but that's part of, I think, what we have to look at is really.
So we'll put this in a memo form to the board. In general, I appreciate the time. I know this is,
Graphics too. Just like-
They can.
yes. You don't want to read 5 pages of, I'll make it pretty. I'll have pictures.
I'm telling you, the benchmarking. You can't ignore that benchmark. Anybody have anything else?
I'd like to comment, I guess. First of all, it's very, very helpful. And it comes across in my mind, and we've spoken about it, it's a lot to absorb. It makes your eyes cross. But the question I have is, and this is probably off base in terms of an observation, but I'm looking at the operating budget versus CPI. In each one of those years, is it reasonable to say we didn't do what we should be doing and got further and further behind the curve?
Mhm.
So going to the 2.1 million does nothing to cure the past deferred maintenance. That's correct. I've got a question. How many positions can't you fill because of that you're trying to fill that you can't fill?
Right now, so it depends on what area. Right now we have, say,
Out of the total number again, a position?
total vacancies, I want to say 30. Yeah, 26.
Third. So a third of the
So-
vacancies you're trying to fill.
Correct. And that's across all branches. It's not just the park manager, it's the facility.
Okay. So the question I have is 2.1 million isn't enough to make up for past sins, right? So if we're going forward to create something that makes us competitive, if you will, or more in the ballpark of being able to do the job the way we want to do it, it may not be to the same level in terms of staffing that our benchmarking has, but it's a heck of a lot more than we have right now. And to me, that's a message. We need to take this the next step and say, okay, this is what we want you to do, and this is why. And I don't know how or how many meetings we'd have to have with board members to get this across. But it certainly is a lengthy meeting, and maybe there's a way, and maybe it's in the verbiage and whatever, to get it across to board members. But I think it's critical that we do that as soon as we possibly can, provided that it doesn't confuse our other asks in terms of the budget process.
This is too complex for the board members, not that they couldn't understand it if they wanted to, but they're big picture people. They want like summaries of things, sound bites of things that make them understand very, very clearly. So this presentation, I think, would be too much and too long for a board member. But the whoever just said the thing about summary points and, you know,
Memo.
and memorandum, yeah, that.
For all those supervisor
it.
staffs that come back and listen to that we know they're all smart, that they can understand.
You know, what, again,
No, I'm teasing.
they're big people, they're big picture
Yeah,
people.
but, and they have a million things going on,
That's right.
of which we're one of 87 problems today.
So
Yeah,
it's
I-
not meant to be a criticism or negative at all, just a fact of life. And a strategy that we have to take to make our point, I think.
I guess this suggests that maybe we have these folks back again with the strategy and what might be absorbable of each one of these steps, because I think, at least in my mind, this has been very helpful stepping through this. And I think if you leave out any of that information that's critical, then we're going to lose them. I mean, they're not going to understand, even though we've tried. And I know that's complicated with regard to, how much time you can spend and attention.
Focus this message, how can we focus this message and make it understandable to the most people as fast as possible? I think is what we need.
We'll take a shot at writing that.
Well, as Ron pointed out, we are 0.7% of their budget probably.
Right.
That said, I also know that well, unfortunately, our executive director and her senior staff also have a different audience that in addition to supervisors, they have to work hard with. Like the county executives and deputy county executives and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But,
I would love to be 2% of their budget, probably.
yeah, all right. Well, and I'm sure they could reduce their programming enough to make that happen.
Yeah, all right, let's wrap this up.
I tried to.
I know you did. I know.
Seeing nobody else was with the hand up, I'm gonna adjourn the park operations committee and Jay and Sarah and Kim, thank you very much.
Thank you, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Linwood.
And we will get this emailed out to us, right? Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll call the different minutes to the order and.
Hello. It's nice to see you all. My name is John Burke. I'm the Natural Resource Branch Manager. I'm looking forward to talking with you all later on the year about the annual report out for the Natural Resource Management Plan for our branch entirely. Today, we're a little bit more focused and talking about Old Chester Park specifically and a request to approve funding to be used for this park. Just a few notes. We talked about the tree condition and forestry as part of the previous conversation and many came up. So part of the reason for those additional expenditures could be the bulk of impact from emerald ash borer over the past 10 years since 2013 and also generalized oak decline. That's not the point of this presentation. I'll talk with anyone who's interested about those topics, but that could explain some of that. I encourage you all to go and check out some of our resource-based parks this time of year. Particularly some of our meadows have great blooms of goldenrod and a lot of our grasses are also blooming now to the detriment of some of our allergies, but nevertheless, they're looking quite nice. So I'll talk about one today. This is Old Colchester Park and Preserve. This is in the Mount Vernon district. It's all the way basically far southeast in the county. And this is a park of significant cultural and natural resources value. I'm not going to talk too much about the cultural side of things because it's not my expertise, but I will be talking about the natural elements of this park and what their request would support in that vein. You can see there have been a number of studies on Old Colchester Park and what I'm proposing today and what has occurred in the past, which I will discuss will support, you'll see will support these initiatives, these reports and these plans. And the Vulcan Fund itself was awarded to Park Authority as part of a deal with Vulcan and the acquisition of this park in 2009. We currently have a little over $600,000 remaining in that fund, and I'm requesting the approval to utilize $300,000 of that funding for natural resource management projects. So here are some examples of implementation. So at present, you'll see at Old Colchester. I'd love to show you all these if you want to come check them out. I assure you they look a lot better than it might do in some of these pictures here. But we have a number of different projects, including reforestation to about 6 acres of active reforestation, as well as modification of the hydraulic conditions of the site. Looks to be basically have ditches run through it. And we have modified the hydrology to improve biodiversity and establish a coastal plain upland depression swamp. And of course, as with our other projects, we have extensive basin management to hit on the maintenance elements of these programs to ensure that the active management that we're doing at these sites is able to be retained and we maintain the biodiversity and forest structure that we're trying to support. With this proposal and this funding request, we aim to bolster the projects to date that we have on site. You'll see some examples here that will support both wetland and forest habitat types on site, as well as some proposed coastal work there along the Occoquan River. We would like to continue monitoring both amphibian populations in the designed and installed vernal pools, which is the first of this type that Park Authority has done in the county, both through the monitoring the amphibian populations, looking for obligate breeding species in those pools. But also we want to continue to monitor the groundwater level as a result of the hydrologic modifications that we've made recently with the installation of ditch plugs to encourage that rare swamp type in this park. It does require some ongoing monitoring to ensure both that the water level is responding the way we want it to, and that the natural vegetation can be to the additional changes in hydrology there. We're also looking at a new reforestation project, which I'll show you here in an additional slide. But some of these other initiatives that we have listed here will go to support either ongoing projects or projects that have been completed, at least through the foundational stage of the reforestation, vernal pool installation, and established control areas for invasive plants and things. In addition, we'd like to continue to explore the feasibility of a living shoreline project. Although we were trying to avoid some of the previously scoped ideas of having riprap out there to reduce erosion, we're looking for a lower impact revegetation and stabilization of the street of the riverbank there in support of some Virginia state rare species that are growing. This is what I was alluding to earlier. This is the forest restoration that we are targeting, and this will compose likely a little less than half of this funding. It's about 4 acres of forest. You can see that the condition of the forest just from this picture is heavily impacted. We are aiming at restoring forest structure here. And the reason why we're being sort of general with that is because it's hard to assess what the natural community condition is and can be with this forest and its current state. You'll see that the canopy is heavily degraded by the presence of invasive vines. And by restoring this forest, we'll be able to tie it in a continuous fashion to other high quality forest areas in the park. But as an additional bonus, we'll be supporting our sister agency or sister branch rather with the cultural resources branch by providing access to the archaeologists to this part of the park, which is apparently of significant cultural importance. And they're very excited to get these vines cleared out so that they can do some additional studies in this part of the park. So with that, I will take any questions. And it was brief and high level, but we're looking forward to continuing to invest.
Yeah, could you tell me what the invasives are? Is it all porcelainberry or is it, what other vines are there? I mean, what in your reforestation project, what are you going to be removing?
So yeah, the main targets will be porcelainberry, bittersweet. Those are the 2 main culprits that are the invasive vines that are actually taking down or have really taken down the forest structure.
So would we have a plan with our invasive management folks to maintain after this is done? Or will they come up with a plan to make sure that the invasives don't come back?
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of the approved funding for the Landscape Legacy and Sustainability Program, after the restoration work occurs, they will step in at that point to ensure that invasives are suppressed in this section of the park as well as in other sections.
I think we need some hungry goats for this.
For goats, yeah.
Go ahead.
Are you having a lot of problem with shoreline erosion there?
So the shoreline erosion is not as bad as you might see in some marine coastal areas, but a lot of the erosion that we are seeing could be attributed to boat traffic, things like that.
Well, I was just asking because it's out of the widest part of Belmont Bay, so there shouldn't be a lot of wave action occurring naturally because it's somewhat narrow there, and it is a no wake zone there, so there should be. And that's why.
Yeah.
So it's frankly, it seems like it would be the perfect place for, what was the descriptive word you used? Low impacts stuff.
So my background is in coastal restoration as well. And so we've done several different living shorelines within the Northern Virginia area. And that's one of the reasons why we want to take a look at the feasibility. The original designs were slightly over-engineered. Maybe slightly would be it. Saying that a little sarcastically, but nonetheless, we do think that there's quite a bit of fetch that does go to that area. So it is something that we need to take into consideration, but we do think that there's great opportunity for softer engineering in this location.
Anyone else?
Oh, the funds you're gonna use are drawing down half of your reserves from this fund. Is there a plan for the rest of the funding in that area, or is that gonna be what you're talking about, the shoreline restoration, once you get your plan done, is that where it's gonna go?
So this will be for exploring the possibilities and most importantly, the price of what that sort of work
Yeah.
costs for the restoration of the shoreline in particular. So I would feel comfortable seeing what that number looks like before dedicating the rest of the funding in this fund. That's obviously a conversation that we would have to have internally with the division, not just the natural resources branch, but also the cultural resources branch, of which this funding is also dedicated and so forth.
Consensus moving forward?
Yes.
All right, very good.
It makes Jay really happy because she needed an opportunity to monitor some convenience and use your foods.
All right, anything else? All right, then our committee, resource management committee is adjourned. Thank you.
Yes, I know.
Why are you so late?
See you down the garage. Another popular subject, we'll call the budget committee to order. And looks like you're it, huh?
I am, yes,
Yes,
yes, thank
okay.
you, Mr. Quincy.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know, I've recently started coaching my older son's baseball team, so I know the pitch clock is on, Chairman Quincy. We're gonna go as quickly as we can here. So first and foremost, before we get into the budget items, you'll recall that we do have an item that we sent out previously to go through our fourth quarter budget review for the Park Revenue and Operating Fund. This is specifically because we buttoned up all of the year-end items there. We know what our fund balance is, and we're making some proposals in terms of how we would allocate that. So just to remind everyone, you've seen this a few times as we talk about what our net revenue goals are. And our goal this year was to be able to distribute up to $4 million in net revenue between these three different areas here. To continue to rebuild our revenue stabilization reserve. You can see right now before any action that it's at about 2.3 million, should be at about $6 million. We're continuing also to meet the requirements of former audit finding to defer revenue we received in 1 year for programs in the next year. That's mainly our summer camp programs. Our estimate right now is that we should be at about $7.5 to $8 million. Once we catch up, then we'll keep up with that. But we're at about $2.6 million right now. And then our revenue sinking fund, you know, we were just talking about that with the big chart, the $166 million. And that includes our deferred maintenance and reinvestment. The fact that that's at a current value of $753,000, that right now, that's because we use that. Our roof can be $1 million to $1.5 million. Our pool packs could be $250,000, $300,000. So we're always looking for at least $2 to $5 million annually for that. And our proposed amounts here, you can see on the right, which we'll get through as you see how we arrived at those numbers here in just a moment. So how did we end the year? On the one hand, we can say it's absolutely something that we should be able to celebrate, that we hit $55 million in revenue. You can see that in the top right. That is with our summer camps filled at almost 90% capacity. That continues seeing the net revenue that golf has posted with all the great weather that we've had. But you can also see then that our expenditures and our different transfers that are required there, it's at 52.3, almost $52.4 million. So as a result, when you look at all of this, we don't have $4 million to be able to distribute. It's more like about $2.7 million. So on the one hand, we can celebrate that we have people returning to our facilities. We're continuing to focus on growth where we can and to fill all of those seats and all of our different programs. But those expenses, especially when we talk about, like we did at the last meeting, with the additional fees that you supported, that those costs, when we have a 7% increase in MRAs for salaries, we have to be able to find those somewhere. So just for comparisons, we can see all of the most recent fiscal years here, FY19 through the current fiscal year, FY23, you can see what our revenue trends are. And the reason that you see fourth quarter kind of coming a bit is because that's deferred, comes out again the next year when we are actually enjoying the revenue for our summer camps there. Of course, FY20, that was a negative, that was COVID. We've certainly come through COVID on the other end, and we're really looking at normal operations as best we can. Expenditures are the same. You can see again, because we're gearing up for summer camp in the fourth quarter, that's our biggest time for expenditures in our revenue fund. But you can also see that we're really following the trends that we're going to spend the money to bring the participants in as well.
Mike, before you move from that one, what's driving? This year seems to be a particularly large jump
Yeah.
in expense. Is that just inflation or is there anything else going on? Okay.
The net revenue then, you can see that our first quarter is generally negative net revenue. And then we move over towards our third quarter, fourth quarter. That net revenue is driven by, as Chairman Stone just talked a little bit about, it's both our increased costs and also the revenue that we're deferring there as well. But we see here in our trends, when we talk across the street, our forecasting models are holding and approximately what we had forecasted, we really hit that as far as the revenue is concerned this year. And just to compare, you can see that in the third column, our actuals, $55 million in revenue, $52.36 million in expenditures, $2.6 million, almost 2.7 in net revenue. That's comparing to our budget, which you had worked with us and passed those budget adjustments later on or earlier this year. Last year, we ended with net revenue of $7.6 million. So again, you can see, both the difference in terms of increased costs, inflation, MRA, and the fact that we were really able to loosen some of those artificial expenditure controls that we had because we were having staff who were struggling to find enough cleaning supplies to be able to stock the rec centers, for instance. So, it's not that we're having people go out and buy gold bars, but we are, certainly saying, the supplies that you need, that's what you see here. So you see this $52 million as a reference point, and you can see that we did overall, better than what the budget was. But certainly you can see that the revenue was higher than FY22, but the expenditures were also significantly higher. So with that, we've shown some slides in the past in terms of what we had to do to climb out of the pandemic issues related to our revenue fund. And we had several transfers, not just from the general fund, but in FY20, $1.4 million in revenue sinking fund. You can see the FY20 and 21 appropriated monopole revenue went to help us really stabilize the operating fund, the revenue and operating fund, but we're continuing to need to really focus on our revenue sinking fund as well. So what we're proposing here, and you'll see it on the next slide as well, is using the largest amount of the year-end net revenue, $1.95 million, to be able to invest back into the revenue sinking fund. And one more work through the appropriated monopole revenue. That's the monopole revenue less the allocations for resource management division that we're proposing to combine those two. So we have $2.7 million to then help to rebuild our revenue sinking fund and deal with some very specific issues that we've identified, again, with roofs, with HVAC, with these building wellness projects that we've talked about. So with these, we would move our revenue sinking fund. It would just be a couple of $100,000 that would be in the revenue stabilization fund, getting closer to our goal, a little bit of $6 million. But focusing on the audit finding and then focusing where the immediate needs are, just really to catch up. So with this, what we would be requesting is that we move to these values so we can get just a little bit closer and be able to deal with those sinking fund issues.
That deferred maintenance, that is that whatever ungodly large $160 million number, okay.
The revenue.
It's a bit the biggest piece of that.
Michael, the question is for the monopole funding, that's going to RMS, is that the concert series or not?
The concert series are still covered, and the resource management division allocations are still covered as well. So after that, this is what would be available that has not been spoken for by the board mandated requirements on monopole fund. So that number, rather than being in the 900,000 to $1 million range, is about $700,000.
I mean, I'm agreeable with rebuilding these funds, but I do want in 2024 to have the monopole money move back to where it was for all the districts. We can have a discussion about it when the time comes, but I really would like to have that happen because that was supposedly stopgap funding and it shouldn't be churned up every year to cover costs elsewhere.
That's part of the reason why we put this in context here, that it's FY 2021 and moving into what's been appropriated for FY 23. That's not necessarily the plan to do this every year. We will come back and be able to talk at a future meeting about what monopole looks like, and perhaps even laying out all those board mandated requirements that really came about with previous budget reductions and some of the other exercises that we've had.
And remember, we were projecting to have 4 million what did we project originally? 4 million,
We were projecting more than $4 million.
$4 million. So we got hit with MRA being 5.4%. Am I making numbers up? What was MRA last year?
Last year.
4.5%.
It was 5.3%, and then this
5.3%.
year 7% was the average total.
So one, I think Ron's right to put a pin in the fact that what was in part to, I thought the resource management piece we had committed to long term, but a percentage of it.
And we still.
No, I'm
yes.
saying, Ron, I thought that there was a piece of it we said would collect and come out, but that the rest of it was theoretically temporarily going to be put together to solve some issues, but that was supposed to be temporary. So I think that's important to put a pin on and come back to that conversation.
We're hoping that this is the last time.
But I look at slides 5 and 6. Net revenue in my world, that's profit. So, the profit of the program. Slide 5 shows the revenue trends, slide 6 shows expenditure trends. Going back multiple years before COVID, like we had talked about, as an important way to understand. Looking at this, there seems to be some increased revenue, sort of, maybe now. And when you look, for example, at 5, you see, we do a little bit better first quarter, we do a little bit worse second quarter, better third quarter, a little bit, fourth quarter is not as good as, say, 2019. So up there. But what I notice is when I look at the expenditures, the expenditures tend to be, they tend to trend higher than on the revenue side. And I would assume that can't all be restocking of cleaning supplies.
No, it's not restocking cleaning supplies. It's all of our contracts. It's the fact that pool chemicals have gone up more than 50%. It's the fact that just in the past 2 years, base staff costs have gone up more than 12%.
Well, and so I guess recognizing that, just like I talked about inflation before, and you have all these different things that are hitting, I think it's important to begin to think about projecting forward what we think is a permanent change. In other words, are we more permanently looking at, and I'm making up numbers because I don't, are we looking more permanently at a $2 million profit versus a $4 million profit, or whatever? I think is important. The other thing that I'm drawing from memory, and I think we're a couple of years away from doing it, but my recollection is that there's a chunk of golf revenue that pays off bonds, and I believe like in 2026, maybe
31, I think, Laurel Hill, 31.
I thought there was one that came in.
It's gone. We already paid.
Okay, we passed that one.
Yeah, we passed that one, and then the remaining Laurel Hill, has been refinanced, so it's.
So it was
lower, but
refinanced and
yes.
pushed out.
Yeah.
So we've already got the benefit of one and we still have this issue. I think it's important because we did a study 5 years ago, at some point. We did this big study, met with the supervisor, I mean, we had all these meetings about rec centers and all this stuff. And that specifically said that the conclusion of that was that minus massive investments in the rec centers. I mean, like $200 million worth of investments in the rec centers. Basically, really quickly, all at one time to get them all up to blah, 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 blah. There was a time, the revenue from them, the profit from them was going to diminish until it hit a point where it actually inverted.
Right.
And I think that it's important when we're looking at some of these things where we're seeing, for any variety of reasons, more pressure on the profit piece, on the net revenue piece. And we're already projecting, for example, the rec centers to become more problematic. That we be thinking through what that is going to look like long-term, because that's going to present, in addition to whatever issues we have across the street, we haven't even talked about all the renovation stuff, which is, bazillions of millions of dollars that we have to figure out. We're going to have increased, I think, pressure on the revenue side for a variety of reasons. And I think things like inflation and trying to be competitive with staff salaries, that is going to accelerate where that point of convergence is.
Intersection.
Yes, yeah. And so I just think we need to be thinking through that ahead of time so that we're not behind the eight ball and reacting to it, and recognize that some of those investments don't seem to be on the table, which is fine, I guess, but we have to plan for that reality.
I think that one of the things that, and rec center, and it's already sort of seeing a lot as the trying to recover from, COVID. What keeps me up at night is golf. It's not rec centers. It's rec centers or rec centers, right? And they're going to do that, and they're going to have a natural variability. But the fact, like golf, we could have the best courses in the world. Golf can just tank.
Right.
It could have a dry summer. People, it was going this way before. If you would have told me before COVID ever happened that golf was going to have this like renaissance, I'd be like, what are you kidding me? Everybody's looking at how to repurpose our municipal golf courses. So we're hoping, and part of the reason why golf is so great is because we have great people and great courses or whatever it is. But that is the number that keeps me up more.
If we were at 19 numbers, we would be in a world of trouble right now.
We talked about some of the memberships at Laurel Hill and stuff. And people like it, I always want to remember that things like that kept us alive.
Yes.
At downtimes. And so but I appreciate what you're saying about the rec centers, except that the study.
No, it's happening too. But right
Yeah,
now, what's
convert-
keeping us from seeing that impact so much is
I
golf.
agree.
And so
And
that's,
camps.
and camps, right? And so if those two things weren't there, that intersection with rec we would be there right now.
I just think, me personally, I look at this and I believe, I just believe that there's maybe everybody else sees it as a big problem. And I see it as a huge problem. I always feel this. We're focused enough on the fact that this is a coming major level issue for us as an authority. That is no simple solution, as capital improvements and all sorts of problems to it. So and seeing these numbers where already our base stuff is less profitable, just says to me that we're accelerating that intersection. And that scares me.
And that assumes that we don't change any of the models of golf or rec centers to make them more equitable.
So next.
More equitable.
It assumes.
They're
Yes, you're right.
they're far from equitable.
It assumes the system in place that is in place now. But it also, the previous solutions to solving it were not, let's make them more equitable. It was, wait, we need to invest $200 million, which we don't have. So whatever we do on the equity side, which would take them, I guess, out of the
I like
revenue
all that.
fund and
I
make them a
just-
general fund problem.
True and equitable. I heard
It's
you
a huge
before.
problem over there.
And I got the point the
Yeah.
first time.
I just,
Yeah,
sorry.
I would just add the thought that if I'm looking into the future with my crystal ball, that Fairfax County is a growing county. There are people moving in by the thousands every year. And they can build a gym on any street corner in Fairfax County. They can't build a golf course. And that's why I would suspect that golf will be one of the dominant sources of our revenue for the future, because nobody else is building courses.
So Jay's gonna sleep a little better.
We'll find it someplace. Find some,
Kinds of wood.
please, find it someplace.
Your point is, it's easy for somebody to build to knock down a shopping center, and build a gym. They can't knock down a housing development and build a golf course. It just, you don't get the land back. It doesn't happen.
That's not happening.
It just doesn't happen. Once the land's gone, it's gone.
All right, we have actually two more budget.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to answer your question or answer your concern there, this is exactly the kind of thing. That's why we're hedging our optimism. It's great, you know, where we ended from a revenue standpoint, but this is something that Jay has charged a large group of staff to really figure out what can the future look like, because it's not sustainable, the direction that it's going.
Okay, any more questions on this first item? Is there a consensus to move it forward?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Quincy. So, hi, my name is Michael Peter. So tonight, we, as part of the budget process that we've worked out both internally and with the board here, this is our opportunity to present what staff have come up with. This is really our phase one approach in terms of what we're putting out there in terms of what our general fund budget requests package would be. So we're putting this out here now. It's going to be posted online. Public will be able to respond to this. And the first part of this will just ask to affirm that you'll be moving forward with an action item tonight. That you can see where we are in this budget development summary. The budget reduction package that we discussed at the last meeting is now incorporated into this, and we'll be going through this process as well. So the first action item 2 is again, just reminding everyone of what our budget reduction guidance was. We came up with the 7% of our general fund appropriation. The Board of Supervisors discussed this in the meeting yesterday, and there's also a budget committee.
No, not yesterday. Sorry, I'm gonna interrupt. They're talking about it on Tuesday. We did
And
not
that's the
make that.
budget committee meeting coming up.
Yes, coming up on Tuesday, sorry.
Tuesday.
Yes.
And that's 1:30 in the afternoon on Tuesday. Keeping in mind that the guidance that we had here is that not every reduction will be taken, but the county executive, the county leadership has asked for this from all departments. We came up with, as you recall, our $2,370,000 overall package, and this was the net result of that. We're not going to go through all of these again since we went through them, but I believe Mr. Quincy, then we would have a motion to move this to vote tonight.
Any questions before a motion?
I have a
Go ahead.
question about the action item itself. And typically, but since this action item theoretically stands as the thing that gets sent across the street, I think in terms of the background, the last presentation we went through, there was a discussion about why we limited our focus to a certain piece of our budget. And unless I'm missing it, I don't see that explanation in the background as to explaining why we limited our discussion of potential, of non-advised potential, however you probably worded it, to this group of people. We did not, last time we said, we were gonna take all of this stuff off the table and not talk about it. We're gonna focus our cuts on this. I think that we need to explain, I think there needs to be something in here in the action that, you know, a couple sentences says, this is how we came to, this is the only tool we're touching to look at. Because I think that were this to become real, I would be advocating we'd have to put on the table the entire authority and ask ourselves to prioritize across the entire thing, not just the $7 million or whatever it was that we looked at.
So I think that we're separating out. So this is not a riffing exercise. So that is not us choosing.
Explain that in, That's what my point. I think we can
Right,
explain.
but we can't, we
why we're
can, but we're
focusing
not gonna be able to go
so-
back. I want to make it clear, because I don't want you guys voting on something that's not. If this becomes real, we can't go back and decide we want to do refs instead. This is what we're proposing. There are options of cutting. If there is a cut, 1, 2, this is the list that they cut from.
Okay, last time as I recall, maybe I didn't ask it correctly.
Mm.
I asked, is this a straw man and we can change things if it becomes real? And I was told it's a straw man.
No,
You're
this
not-
is a straw man of we're hoping that if they come back with 1 or 2%, they wouldn't just randomly pick from this, that we would get to sit down and say, don't just pick.
Only from this.
This is what we're yes. This is what we're proposing for them to be picking from.
I did not understand.
Okay, did you want to open it up back up for,
Well,
or we can talk offline?
I have serious concerns, given what's happened in the past.
Mm.
Of saying to the public that we're, for example, gonna take away all the Porta John.
Mhm.
Because we have been ripped on by the board of supervisors about that in the past. We have heard massive public outcry in the past. You and I have sat through meetings where we have been hammered by every athletic organization that could show up in a room to complain about, for example, the bathroom issues. And way back when we said, okay, wait, we're not going to look at things like that because we know we know we're gonna get hammered for it. So I thought, when I talked about it being a straw man, I thought, okay, wait, when it becomes real, we can have a more in-depth conversation.
This is so,
I apologize about.
one of the things that we came back with the maintenance positions is we can't, the only other. In the original presentation, we were showing so the pie chart of the different department divisions and how much is personnel and how much is operating. So just off the cuff, let's take RMD, for example. Their operating dollars are tied to their sites. So I can't take the operating dollars and not shut the sites down. So the thing on there would be shut down Eleanor C. Lawrence, which would be another, Washington Monument. The other option is, we just had Kim up here talking about the 8 positions. We already know that there's 20 positions that don't really have money because we've taken the money elsewhere. They might look and see, so the vacancy option is the 8 that we're trying to fill right now. When we presented last time, is we're never gonna get those back, ever. We don't get any in the first place. I can't give up positions.
If you're asking me.
Mhm.
To make an actual, to sit here and say to say, would I rather give up a position that may not have been filled for 3 years? We've sat in this room before and looked at positions that hadn't been filled in 8 and 10 years. Way back when, so I don't know where
Those positions are not funded.
Right.
They're not funded, correct.
And so, but we sat in this room in order to make cuts. Way back when on a Saturday morning, that we had to come in for a special meeting because we had to move things around to make the world work. And we moved positions from general fund to revenue fund and did these different things, including positions that hadn't been filled the next amount of time. I just think that at a minimum, there needs to be an explanation as to why we're only focused on this. And, if I will defer and say, I didn't understand last time when I should have been more expressive and understanding, and therefore defer and say, okay, I screwed up last time but I don't think, when I look at this and somebody says, why are these the only things when you could get rid of whatever? I think we have to have at least an explanation in the item that says, this is why we focused on only.
We can
this
add that.
area.
But we can put that in there. I just want to make it clear I don't want to make it seem like the whatever is big. We just had a presentation on maintenance. That's the whatever. I'm already we're taking these numbers from the remaining budget, which is already 50% of what we actually spend. So we're already taking positions to fund these
I am
things.
an advocate
Yeah.
for it. Listen, if I were on the board of supervisors, I would take money from a variety of other programs and give it to the parks, because I think it's spent a whole lot better in the parks. But I ain't one of them. I can't make those decisions. I'm just saying that within the sandbox that we are in, that we at least need to explain why we are focused on.
Yes,
these
we can do
pieces.
that. Yes.
And
Put some
I
explanatory
clearly
wording.
did not understand last time, and will defer and not make an issue anymore, but I just didn't, I thought this was when it came back to us, we got to reopen and say, here's all the things we want to look at to solve the problem.
i.e. this county executive is saying you have X dollars to cut.
Right, we decided to cut you
Cut,
3.5%.
allocate that wherever you want.
Now go figure it out. And not-
It was definitely talked about why it was narrowed
Right.
to
Yeah,
there, how you
yeah.
couldn't do the others. So all you're asking for is a brief explanation.
Just an
of which was
explanatory
explained
word.
to
Yes, we could do that.
thoroughly
Right, last
why it was
Yes.
so
Right.
dis-
Okay,
Yes, yes,
that makes
that's part of
sense.
the, yes.
That can be done.
So call the question.
Well, it's just consent.
Well, yes, I now consent to move forward.
Is there a consensus to move this forward
Yes.
with the suggestion that was made?
I mean, is that possible to do this evening, since it is a current, it's scheduled to be as an action item this evening? I mean, can we get draft language between now and when this,
Yes.
okay,
Do it?
Well,
Shouldn't-
they're not
yeah.
actually taking action as a board until the 25th, correct?
no, it's right here.
No, I thought it's on.
It's action item number 3.
Is to be
Tonight,
endorsed,
tonight. Okay.
Yeah,
So we just need to edit the item.
It's just.
For that, yes.
sentences.
Yeah, yes,
Go
that's
off
an
last time's
explanation.
Presentation.
that's doable.
Mandatory piece.
Okay.
It's not-
There's, they can do anything,
Sarah and Jay says doable.
literally minutes.
With that said, is there a consensus to move this forward?
Yes. As a non-recommended budget reduction.
Yes.
Okay,
So much for Sarah's dinner.
okay, Mike,
So now I have the pleasure to be able to then talk about our regular budget development and what it is that absent all these possible cuts, what staff and leadership are proposing as our budget development package. And a lot of what you'll see here is really in response to what we've identified, what we've been working through for the past several months in the maintenance presentation. So that's a real focus here in terms of trying to fill in some of those gaps. So just to remind everyone what our very specific budget guidance was from the Board of Supervisors last year on the general fund side. We have been encouraged, of course, for these meetings to take place to discuss budget issues well in advance of the preparation of the FY25 advertised budget plan. We have been directed as staff to work together with our counterparts across the street to make us operationally whole in future budgets for forestry and bamboo mitigation. And there'll continue to be work, and I think there's an update coming at an upcoming meeting on the work to develop the recommendations for the park ranger program as well. So with that, we do have budget requests right now that total $6.8 million in current numbers. You can see how these really line up here. We can go through these quickly, and as we put this together, there'll be additional information that will be provided as we work with you and respond to the staff comments to really crystallize this as we go forward in the public comment period. So for the first item, you saw this last year. We did put together what was a $275,000 request to catch up with CPI, really just on our administrative contracts. What we've done this year is we've expanded that look to also our park operations, our maintenance contracts, our mowing, our irrigation maintenance, for instance. And we've also identified some really specific vulnerabilities we have coming up with the renewal for the new RFP going out for services like contract mowing and pest management. So we've arrived at a number of $658,000. Things have really caught up as far as the CPI is concerned right now on the supply side with COVID. On the materials side, it's really staffing that's driving this now. The staffing costs just to be able to have a skilled mowing crew out to work on our athletic fields has gone up in some cases as much as 40%. So that's one of the pieces that we're talking about just to continue to provide services at the current levels. And you can see, again, this is really reproduced from the last presentation. This is our maintenance budget versus CPI. You can see that $2.1 million gap. So just that piece a moment ago is an attempt to help to try to close that gap a little bit. But this is a really good way, and Mr. Thompson, you'll see this in the memo. You'll see some of these charts that will help to explain this as well. Next, this is a really simple one. We've been asked to identify what will it take to make us whole for bamboo mitigation. We have in our current budget a bamboo mitigation coordinator. Unfortunately, that's something that's also on the reduction possibility list because we have not filled that position. That's brand new. We did receive one-time funding of $400,000 for this first year for bamboo mitigation. We're thankful for that. But to be able to go forward and deal with the current estimate of about 200 acres of running bamboo throughout our system, we need to know that we have that funding available each year. How it comes is another conversation, but right now, all we know is that we have enough money for 1 year, and going forward, this is really the target for us to be able to meet these requirements. We've talked quite a bit about zero waste, trash, and recycling. When we presented this, both at our carryover conversations and in the budget process last year, we had identified several different models that we may be able to work on to be able to accomplish this. But the simple fact of the matter is that we need to have dedicated crews in all of our maintenance areas and at our majorly trafficked facilities to be able to pick up sorted trash and recycling, to be able to haul that, for us to be able to compact that, and to be able to have it move through the system in Fairfax County as it's supposed to. Right now, maintenance staff, and this is all across the system, spend as much as half of their week just picking up trash, and that's not sustainable with everything else that we have to be able to do in our parks. So we've identified this proposal that has a combination of one-time items, about $2 million, and that would fund the purchase of 8 trucks, 8 compactors, the associated site preparation necessary for that, and then 750 waste and recycling containers. So we would have consistency throughout all of our systems. Ongoing, we would have 6 maintenance crew chiefs, senior maintenance workers, non-merit maintenance workers, and ongoing general operating and maintenance. So we've divided this so we can present this across the street as a combination of, again, whenever we can find one-time funds, we would absolutely invest in there, but we can't have a truck funded and not a crew funded at the same time. So really, we've identified how this could phase in, but this is really the proposal for us to be able to provide consistent trash and recycling pickup at our facilities, at our parks. You've seen this before as well. This goes again to part of that $2.1 million gap to us being able to keep up with all of these new acquisitions that come in, or these new uses that come in. In FY23, we asked for and we received $201,000 for really a catch up from the period of FY18 to 23. That was an addition of 214 acres, 13 renovated sites. That was fantastic. But as you can see here, last year we asked for $350,000 for the table on the left. We did not receive anything for that table, and we have new requests as well. You can see that we have now the formal acquisition of Blake Lane Park. We are going to work through the expansion of Mount Vernon Woods Park with additional amenities. You can see that it's not just a maintenance question, but we have the Woodlands Education and Stewardship Center, which is set to be at primary completion later this fall. So that's a little bit over $1 million for us just to keep up with what's either new or renovated and adjusted in our inventory. This includes adding some additional positions that would deal with our maintenance issues, the specialized maintenance items at the Woodlands Center. Also adding specific staff for the Laurel Hill Central Green as well, to be able to accomplish what we need to at such a large park in that area. So this ends up being $1.5 million as we're requesting putting this together. And that number on the right side will be adjusted slightly. We had one adjustment just before this meeting here as well. Forestry.
Question?
Yes, ma'am.
So the 1.5 is the 350 plus that?
It's 350 plus that number of 1.039 will be adjusted. It's a little bit more than that. We just had an adjustment to this request just before we came into the meeting. So yes, that's correct.
I guess my confusion is you indicate on the left, that it's for FY 23 sites. And you repeat that on the right.
When we came forward with our request for this year, it was FY 22, and then what we had acquired up to that point.
Okay,
And so then our starting point is just after that, and
Okay.
what we know is coming up now.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for that question. Forestry is the other very specific item that the board of supervisors has asked us to figure out how we can be made operationally whole. And we just want to caution here, we've talked about this, you've seen these forestry presentations. John talked about the fact that oaks are maturing and falling over, and those oaks that are maturing and falling over are much wider circumference, so it costs us more to be able to deal with just these high-risk trees. So this $890,000, this is to allow us to continue to keep up with our contract costs, so these things don't happen. You've seen this just a minute ago as well, the costs keep going up. We went from 2013, we had about $237,000 in contract costs. We're projecting $1.273 million this year, and we're already encumbered at more than 40% of what the total amount that we have available is. So yes, we have some carryover money that can be attached to this, but we're not going to be able to take from all of these other different maintenance areas that we have in the past year, and we still have to be able to do this. This does not allow us for proactive forestry work. It does not allow us to deal with more of the medium risk and more of the arboreal planning that has been talked about quite a bit over the past several months and years. This is just to keep up with forestry. And of course, equity is going to be a very, very big issue. That's still a TBD right now, but it's getting closer and closer to some actual numbers being put together for this. We're finalizing our work with our consultants, with DMV and our other partners across the street. There was always the intention that this would come after really the election cycle, come after the budget cycle began. So we'll have options that we'll be coming forward with in the winter, and we'll be coming back to the board here with an equity request for endorsement in the coming weeks as well. So here we are on the 13th of September. We will be posting this presentation online for public comment. There'll be meetings that are taking place with BOS members over the next several days. We're also meeting with DMV to review all of these requests. This, as we said, will be posted. We'll collect all of those comments. We'll also collect all the different requests for information from the board and other stakeholders as well, as we then move into phase 2 with the final version of this that we're proposing now that the board will have the opportunity to weigh in on this. And then we will be seeking endorsement after a second phase of public comment at the end of October. And this is really just proposing where there'll be opportunities for the public to comment. We will be sending out some information releases through Ben Boxer that will alert where we'll be able to take comments, and we will collect all of those. We'll have some summary of what the general ideas were that are presented, but we'll also provide you with all of the public comment material that comes forward as well.
Any questions?
Yeah, I would. So I want to make sure I'm understanding the number correctly. Yeah. I know there's the 2.1 million that keeps getting referenced as that CPI number. Right. But there was also, I think, the $2.1 million number that was the amount that we're pulling from positions to cover maintenance, right?
Yeah, and those two.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
coincidence, but just making sure there's
Not that much.
2.1.
Yes, yeah.
But okay, that $2.1 million number that we're using to cover. I think the 900,000 for forestry is part of that.
That's correct. I think it is.
So there's still 1.2 million that we would potentially be pulling out next year, right?
Yes, yes.
So then, since we're not making any decisions right now, what I would like to be thrown on the list for us to talk about, the next time this comes up, is that $1.2 million difference that's still out there be added to the list of things we're considering. So, because if we've got $2.1 million of maintenance that we ain't got right now. Let's ask for the whole thing. So that 1.2 is the difference, right? Okay,
Yeah, we calculate and run this all the time, so that's music to our ears.
so let's just add that to the list and we can discuss it future.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Mike. At this time, I will adjourn the budget committee.
No,
this
that's
is
not.
not action.
That's October.
I feel like I'm on a roller coaster. You come with some good news.
Oh, did he adjourn?
It's not gonna get a fun roller coaster next time.
I missed that one. All right, so theoretically, our formal session should have started 13 minutes ago, but we're gonna call a 10-minute recess and we'll get going at roughly 7:53.
I don't want
All right, so we're back in live. All right, it is. What time is it? 7:56, and I call the whatever today's date is, September 13th, 2023 Park Authority Board meeting to order. Ben, do we have any speakers this evening?
Chairman Ben Boxer, Public Information Officer. We do not have anyone signed up to speak this evening.
All right, we'll get right into the administrative items then. The one and only administrative item is the recommended adoption of the minutes of the August 23rd, 2023 Park Authority Board meeting.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Action item number 1 in the Mount Vernon District is the recommended scope approval and implementation of the Natural Resource Management and Ecological Restoration Project at Old Colchester Park and Preserve. Do we have a motion? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Countywide action item number 2 is the recommended approval of the FY 2023 fourth quarter budget review for Fund 80000 Park Services Revenue and Operating Fund.
So
Moved.
Second.
And a second. All right. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That motion carries. Now, before we get to countywide number 3. All right, we do have an updated text. I assume it's the highlighted bit. Okay, per Michael's request. Does that, Mike, if you want to give that a read and that'll work for you?
Double dot.
There's 2 does.
There's 2 does on the second to last one.
Yeah, no, I think that, yes.
Okay.
I think it explains, at least to me.
All right. That part, that hurdle cleared. Should I read this since like this isn't, it's not part of what was advertised, so it's not online. It'll come out afterwards, but I don't know if we need to read it just to put it in the record.
So would you like me to move this text as an amendment to the?
Well, we'll get there, but I just,
Part of the motion.
okay.
As amended.
Oh, so you don't,
I don't think it
not
needs
do
to
it
be
as an
that.
amendment and then vote it, okay?
All right. Countywide action item number 3 is the recommended approval of the and I guess this is important for anyone listening and did not hear the committee meeting earlier or last month's committee meeting. These non-recommended cuts are not at our choice, I guess you will say, in some respects. This is an exercise the county executive requested, and we are following through with that. Just with that kind of caveat put out there. The recommended approval of the non-recommended general fund budget reductions. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Oh, sorry.
Second. And
If
then,
you're looking at me a second, I'll say, but.
okay. Any discussion? Yeah,
That's what I don't know is, is
do
it?
you want to amend it and read
Or
the,
do you want me to move an amendment? I'll just, Mr. Chairman, I moved to amend the publicly posted item in the background section to add at the end at the end of the background piece before the non-recommended budget reductions. Following text. Additionally, per county direction, the proposed reduction should not include encumbered positions, leaving only the park authority's operating funds for potential cuts. The park authority's operating budget is $7,458,149, including $3,282,450 of internal county charges that can't be considered as part of the proposed cuts. This leaves only $4.2 million in operating expenses that can be considered as part of the park authority's $2,370,000 budget reductions.
Okay, so do we have a second with, based on the amendment? Okay. Any discussion
Oh, gosh.
of the amendment? All right. All in favor of the amendment? Any opposed?
Secretary.
Anyway, that motion carries. We have no information items this evening.
Now you have to vote on the.
Oh, that's right. Yes, correct. Okay.
That or motion and.
Right, we've heard the motion second. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, none. That motion carries. Now we're good. We're good, right? We're in the clear. All right. We have zero information items this evening. Chairman's matters. Just want to remind everyone, September 23rd is National Public Lands Day. A number of volunteer opportunities in a number of parks throughout the system, including at Ossian Hall, which is the site of our formal celebration. Ben, what is the time for that? I don't remember.
We begin at 9:30.
Okay, so if anyone's available, come join Ron and I at 9:30 at Ossian Hall. For anyone interested in volunteering at any of the other sites, you can find information on the Park Authority's website. That's all I got. So Jay, it is yours.
Thank you. Okay. We're gonna do a little bit of a summer recap, since it's September. So we wanted to take this opportunity to sort of highlight some of the really great stuff that happened over the summer. So 2023, this is some summer camp numbers. So I'm gonna read off some of the really great stuff that happened. Over 1,000 active programs, 83% fill rate for our summer camps, 25,000 registrations, 11,700 distinct customers, average of 2.15 enrollments per customer. That's an enormous amount of Fairfax County residents that we serve. RecPac, 36 sites. We doubled our total registrations and scholarships since 2022. 3,196 RecPac campers that are Fairfax County residents. 1,100 reside in opportunity areas. So 37% of our RecPac users reside in our equity opportunity areas. And 422, 13% reside in our most vulnerable areas in the county. Access and inclusion, 188 accommodation plans, high independence, 10 diabetes management requests for six kids, 3 ASL interpreters. Our inclusion programs are just phenomenal. 144 inclusion specialist support, all 5 days. 18 kids moved from one-on-one support to total independence, which is a phenomenal number. 1988 therapists family provided support for 10 kids. 12 jump starts, 1 to 2 days of inclusion support, then independence. Our access and inclusion program. So we've got summer camp and we've got RecPac, but then we have our ability to make sure that all kids, regardless of their ability, is able to participate in those programs. And so the inclusion people make sure that, you know, whatever your needs are, that they provide the services that you need so that those kids can actively participate in all of our offerings. So that's a really great number. So that's summer camp. Next slide. Our summer entertainment series. This is our 2023 recap. We had 189 concerts, 18 weekly venues, 40 different genres of music, cultural dance, and children's entertainments, 14 rain cancellations, 4 Starlight Cinema Drive-In movies, total estimated attendance, 37,696, and total foundation funding raised, $206,859. I really do think our summer entertainment series is, we have a lot of best things that we do. One of the best things that we do really is you come out and, you know, talk about looking at the entire neighborhood and the entire community. It really is a great representation of our county and our residents. Next slide. So in front of you, I don't know if you guys have heard before, but I'm competitive by nature. I know it's weird. So I just wanted to highlight on the table, we I just got back yesterday. Some people might have be getting back. No, yes, I got back yesterday. Some people might be getting back today for the Virginia Recreation and Park Society awards. We won 7 of them. So 7 are on there, which is a lot. It might have been like 7 of like 12. We were taking photos of our awards and getting called for more awards is how it went. So these are 5 of them. We also won individual awards for outstanding new professional. Monica Glock, we just talked about the wonderful ADA and inclusion, and that's one of the things that Monica runs, and a distinguished service award for Roberta Corzin, who works in our Marcom division. And these are the other Best Health and Wellness Initiative. That was for the Sully Community Center partnership with all of the services that are in Sully Community Center, including our gym. That was a co-award that we won with NCS. Best New Program for Park Explorers, Best Renovation, Brick and Mortar, Hidden Oaks Nature Center. Most Innovative Marketing Strategy was My Parks Tour. Snapshot Moment Award was the Watermine Family Swimming Hole photo that was on the cover of Park Takes this summer. Outstanding new professional, Monica Glock, and Distinguished Service Award, Roberta Corson. So those are our photos, and we're all very, very excited. Okay, next slide. Don't you love that I just added a slide like in Let's Find This? I just also wanted to,
Check during the meeting
fine.
to make sure.
So I just wanted to, for your reading pleasure, in front of you is the Park and Rec magazine September issue. The feature article is Overcoming Barriers to Park Equity, which I wrote. I highly encourage you to peruse that and take a look. That's the first 2 paragraphs, but it's this magazine, whatever. Thank you. Issue. I'm losing my words. It's almost we're getting there, Linwood. Next slide. National Public Lands Day. Kyle already mentioned it. Saturday, September 23rd. I thought I would join you and Ron, but maybe I'm not invited.
Yeah.
So this is just talking about for the past 30 years, National Public Lands Day is the nation's largest single-day volunteer effort. Fairfax County just promoted our Public Lands Day flyer on their LinkedIn, and we're promoting it all over the place. We highly encourage people, whether or not you come out to Ossian Hall Park or volunteer in your own park, let us know what you're doing, and please get out and volunteer on those days. Next slide. That's that last one. And that's it.
Good time while I'm chewing. All right, let's go around the horn. Michael. I would agree. Ron. Okay. Faisal. Pass. Jim.
Pass.
Abena. Ken.
Pass.
Glenwood.
Off the record,
Off the record.
already know this, but the honey is from my son's.
Thank you very much.
It's all done organically, no pesticides or anything.
That's why everybody
pesticides or anything were used in it. It was all processed in thoroughly clean food grade containers. And, enjoy it, and staff, make sure you take what's over there for you. Please don't leave any. I carried it up. You have to carry it.
Were the bees treated okay?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they like it.
Cynthia.
I just want to remind everyone, I'm sure you must know, save the date. So for the Ellie Doyle Awards.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Friday, November 17th at the beautiful Crystal View. So finally, yes, yay. All right. So everybody's been doing a great job. We had a meeting today, and I just wanted to say thank everyone for all that you do.
Jim.
Just quickly, this Saturday, the 16th is Riverbend's Native American Festival, or the 10 to 2 and have a good day. So it's a great time. Love to see you out there. Thank you.
Maggie.
Well, this is a little farther in the future, but I'm not going to be at the next meeting. In fact, I'm not going to be at meetings in October. So I want to get this out now. On October 7th is Parktoberfest. It's at the E.T. Lawrence Park. They have live music, food, beer,
it's a lot of fun. So everyone is invited. And then the following Saturday, October 14th, is Centerville Day, the historic, the historic area of Centerville. Lots of food trucks and you notice the food theme here. It's just a really great festival. So I wanted to point both of those out.
Yeah.
You take the buses in from the Trinity Center. You can manage. Anyway, I wanted to get those out. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have a closed session this evening. Allison, anything else to come before us? All right, then I adjourn the September 13th, 2023 park board. See y'all in 2 weeks.
Yay.
Hey.